professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:08 on CJD. Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, and filling in for Josh Miller today is Fuller Landau's Mike Newton. Welcome back, Mike.
Hi, Dan. Good to be here.
Now, we're going to get to our guest in just a second, but first, Josh is absent this week because he's over in Hong Kong, and he wanted to convey this message about doing business over there. Josh wrote to me this morning, opportunities are everywhere, but sitting on your laurels is tantamount to business suicide. While the world concentrates on failing economies and the beaten are crying the blues, the global entrepreneurs are recognizing that there are economies that continue to thrive and consumer needs that continue to expand. The danger is trying to go at these markets alone. What is often ignored, Josh says, are the many business multipliers and entrepreneurs that people can tap into. Don't be stubborn, especially in foreign markets. Use local resources, government, business chambers, relevant trade media, trade shows, professionals, etc., to gain access to these multipliers. I'm seeing, Josh says, and evidence of this every day I'm here. The resulting success stories are outstanding, and seeing the action on the ground is truly encouraging. So Mike, tell us a little bit about why Josh is there and why it's so important for him to be there on a regular basis.
Well, Josh is past president of the Hong Kong Canada Business Association chapter in Montreal, so he's been going over for a number of years in order to basically on a trade mission, touching base with as well with some of our international leading edge affiliates in Hong Kong and in China. The goal obviously is to try and facilitate the ability of Canadians and particularly Montrealers to do business in the Chinese marketplace. And you hear horror stories and you hear all kinds of myths and you hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. Effectively, I think he's trying to demystify the process. As you go into the foreign markets, I think there's always a fear of two things. One, I can do it myself. I don't need to pay somebody on the ground. I don't need to have the connections. Or there's the other side, which is the complete paranoid side, as I can't do business in a foreign market because it's something that I don't understand. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I really, I think, as Josh put it very eloquently, it's nice to know he's doing something while he's over there, not just having a good time, is the ability to reach out and use the network of people that are there. The Chinese economy certainly has been very strong, as well as the Indian economy, and I think parts of strong in parts of South America as well at the moment, the Brazil areas. So I think it's key to use the contacts and the sources. We live in a global economy, and nobody needs to do it on their own. And clearly, when our neighbors to the south and the market is not what it used to be, when we were in the 80-some-odd% trade partner, people would automatically want to go to Europe because they could kind of feel and touch and understand Europe. Well, they're not in any better shape right now than the U.S. is, and the Canadian market is only so big, so we need to find alternative sources to sell our products.
So Josh returns next Monday night, and I await his review of shark fin soup as well.
Most definitely.
We'll have to wait for that. But for now, let's get to our guest for the evening on today's Entrepreneur. He is the creator of Modasuite.com, Hisham Ratnani. Welcome, Hisham.
Good evening. Happy to be here.
So first, let's start by telling us a bit about Modasuite.com. This is a new business. You've been around for just almost 2 years now. Tell us about the website.
So the company Modasuite.com is actually an online destination, a retail store for men all over North America. So basically, as we know, men all around the world actually have a hard time finding clothes that fit. Either the arm length is too short or the people can't fit and something that's too small or too big. And let's not kid ourselves, guys don't like to shop. So in other words, people go on the website, input their measurements easily through our system, and get everything received at their door in 3 to 4 weeks. So it's basically a new way to shop. Men have loved it, and men keep continuing to buy from our website. So it's really the new wave of shopping.
And now these are highly customizable clothes. How exactly does the manufacturing process work? It seems it would have a bit of challenge in that respect, to be able to cater to all kinds of different people.
That's correct. So basically, we are a online store, and we do customized menswear. So most people are used to their tailor going to somewhere in the street or having a tailor that actually takes all their measurements and crafts a garment for them. And that's what we do. But in a modern era where we simplify the process, it's basically like building your own IKEA table. You look at our videos, you look at our measurement system, and you basically pull a measuring tape, measure your bicep and your shoulders, for example, and then you input it in the system. We validate everything through our smart measurements, and we can craft a pattern for you and therefore a garment just made for you.
Maybe give us a little bit of an idea in terms of going on. I mean, I've gone on, I've opened up an account for myself. It's really straightforward, it's really simple. Maybe just give us an idea of what you're looking for when the individual signs up.
So basically, as people go on the website on Modasuite.com, we begin by asking a number of questions in terms of to fully fulfill our personalization promise. So we begin by asking their clients their style favorite personnel, in terms of do they like these style icons, do they like this sort of clothing. So this allows us to actually recommend and further personalize the experience in terms of offering clothes, because as we know, guys don't know what to shop for either. So if we know you like this icon or this types of style, we can say, here are some clothes that you might like. Now from there, in order to continue our personalization promise, as I said, we actually ask clients to input their body measurements. So people might be afraid of that, but actually we offer, we ship out measuring tapes, we ship out hundreds per day. People are keep asking us for measuring tapes. So it's a really easy process to do. And once actually the fit is done, people receive their garments and we actually pay for alterations credit. So let's say a gentleman receives a suit, he thinks it's a bit too big there or too tight there, so he can take it to his tailor, and we actually refund an alterations credit to guarantee the perfect fit.
We have to take a very quick break and then more with Hisham Ratnani from Modasuite.com. We'll get into how you started the business, Hisham, how you found the financing, and also when it comes to online shopping, there's certainly that security factor there that I think people are worried about. So we're going to address that as well. That's all coming up in a second on Today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau. It's coming up to 7:15 right now.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to Today's Entrepreneur, inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar, along with Fuller Landau's Mike Newton, filling in for Josh Miller, who is in Hong Kong this week. Our guest this evening, Hisham Ratnani from Modasuite.com. And Hisham, well, we were trying to start from the beginning here. Tell us how you came up with the idea of Modasuite.com, having basically a website personalized for men's clothing. Like you were explaining, you put your measurements in and the clothes come tailored to you. Tell me what prompted you to get this idea and how you started the business.
So basically, we're two founders. My business partner, his name is Yifan Song. We were both working together at a consulting firm in technology strategy. And basically, we were both really passionate about everything that's B2C, that's business to consumer, and the large markets that has to offer. I was personally always in love with technology. I loved everything that it can do, how it moved industries, and my role in technology strategy allowed me to see how it actually takes companies to the next level. Now, I knew there was something brewing in the retail and how everything was going online, and my business partner actually he was a bit more of a fashion fan than I am, and he came back with a bunch of tailored clothes that was really well fitting. Everything was great, and we thought about ourselves and how can we bring this to the mass market, and how can more people like us benefit from better fitting clothes online through this retail channel. So basically, that's how we started the company. We actually incorporated in 2009. We worked on the business plan for months, and we actually started selling clothing online in March 2010. So it's over a year now, and it's been a great experience.
When you started, I mean, you mentioned to us earlier that you had incorporated the company in July 2009, and it was not until March 2010 when you finally got it off the ground. Maybe give us a couple of ideas or a couple of steps that you went through. I mean, obviously you have to build the platform, you have to create not only a line but the technology. I mean, our bricks and mortar type retailers are used to setting up the shelves and setting up the stores and finding the location. Here you're faced with a different set of challenges.
Absolutely, it goes from everything from actually designing the garments to programming the website to setting up the international supply chain, the customs brokerage, and ultimately the marketing and customer service. So we're a vertically integrated company, so we own every single step of the process except the actual cut and sewing of the garment. So it was a great endeavor, and that's why it took us a long time to actually set it up. Looking at it right now is that the biggest part was certainly having a physical product. I mean, a lot of the startups today, they do an app online or they do an app on your iPhone. These are great businesses, but it's a lot of coding. It's a lot of back office work. Now, we have a lot of that, but we also have an actual physical product. So we have to ensure that the shirt ultimately fits great. And then it's a good quality. And then we have all the labels, for example, the tags, and people wash your clothes. And then so there's a lot of things that have to be that you have to think about, because it's a full process. And when you're B2C, people can come from all over the place. So basically, it was an actual great adventure to go and set up everything from the marketing, customer service, all the way to the international brokerage.
So you're building the line, you're building the style. You're sourcing. Where's the product coming from, and how do you bridge the gap from local supplier in a Montreal market to a worldwide distribution, while you're also trying to source on an international scale?
So we have a team of tailors and designers here in Montreal. So my business partner, he's actually from Asia, and so himself, he does most of the sourcing, and we have a number of connections over there as well. So we were able to find some top quality, top-notch manufacturing partner to actually do the individual handcrafting every single garment. And of course, at first it wasn't easy, so we had to go through a number of iterations. But that's how it is with a startup. You have to always improve on every single step, and then here we are today with something that's quite up there in terms of quality.
When most of our clients or most of our friends are getting into business, I mean, obviously the ability to source overseas, and going back to maybe Josh's little intro when he started, you're dealing in a foreign environment for most of us. In your case, I guess it helps that your business partner was of Asian descent. But the ability to, I guess, work your way into sourcing when you're starting off at ones and twos is obviously a very, very different game than when you're trying to, bring in hundreds and hundreds of garments. How did you manage to break down that barrier?
Well, we're all salesperson, so basically we had to, of course, sell ourselves as our company, sell our vision. So whether you sell yourself to investors, financiers, or to your family who thinks you're crazy for quitting your job, or whoever, your friends, well, basically you have to sell yourselves to suppliers as well to ensure that, to tell them that you can buy, you can have the supply, and you can bring this into the mass market.
Hisham Radnani is our guest from Modasuite.com. This is Today's Entrepreneur on CJ80.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
724, welcome back to Today's Entrepreneur. Our guest this evening, Hisham Radnani from Modasuite.com, and Mike Newton in for Josh Miller. We're talking about some of the challenges with starting up a new business, and certainly setting up infrastructure, finding the financing. Off the bat, one major challenge. Yeah, financing, especially the way the market's been over the last few years. Not a lot of people are standing out there with open pockets saying, here, take our money to get something off the ground. A lot of places, a lot of times you start, people are looking to try and, they'll knock on the doors of friends and family. But at some point in time, if you're going to take it to a certain level, you have to be able to take that financing and professionalize it the same as the business does at the end of the day. And I think, Hisham, that's basically what you guys are doing at this point. I mean, I know you'd said initially you started off by, trying to hit everybody up at a Christmas party or a turkey gathering and a couple of beers, but obviously that's not going to sustain the financing. So where did you go?
That's correct. So usually people say it starts with the 3 F's, the family, friends, and fools. So that's how you basically get your initial fundraising going. But for sure, we were... our model is to sell clothing, so basically we were able to generate funds and be not really self-sufficient, but have enough funds to keep some sort of cash flow going. The first step for us was, if we step aside in terms of family or ourselves, was actually the local, all the local and government funding that's available. We went through the Youth Foundation of the Mayor of Montreal. We went through the local Center of Development in our area. We also went through the Canadian Youth Business Foundation, the BDC. So there's a lot of actual money that's available for entrepreneurs who are willing to make a bit of a sacrifice and who are willing to get set up in a proper way from a legal perspective and accounting perspective, and get an entire business plan going. So if there are some entrepreneurs who are willing to take that step and to take the time it takes to actually go through the paperwork, you can have a decent amount of money just to get you started off the ground. Now, for sure, it depends on your business, but if you can get that money and combine it with your own money or with your friend's money, and if you can ask your grandma or whoever, well, basically you can probably get something going at the beginning for your startup.
Many people talk about the necessity of having a business plan to get things off the ground, and excuse me, everybody's version of a business plan can differ. I mean, I think the initial step of the business plan is more about the introspection of what you want to do with your own business as it is selling it to somebody else. Maybe walk us through, how many rewrites and how many times you went through the business plan process.
Absolutely. Now, the business plan is actually, people think it just sits in a drawer. Well, it does after some time, but at the beginning, it's really, really important for your own internal analysis as an entrepreneur and as a founder, where you want to take the business, who are the key barriers to the market, who are your key competitors, what differentiates you, what are your values as a company, and where you want to take this. So it's really important to step back and take this very exhaustive view of your business. That's why it's really good to do a business plan. And as you go through the first process to get your local government funding, you'll have no choice to go through that. And it's a really good process for every single entrepreneur who wants to start a business.
When seeking funding, how do you make the business plan believable and credible? How do you portray yourself as someone who will make money in 1 year, 2 years down the road?
Well, for sure, you have to have. It's always about a number of things. For example, to start off, it's your idea. And is your idea, does it have a large enough market? Do you think you're going to have traction? And ultimately, it comes to the entrepreneur. Do you have a history of success? Do you think you can and be able to convince people and sell people on your idea and on your vision? So it's really about having the balance between idea and entrepreneur. And ultimately, is it everything is ready and is it the right timing? So the timing is really important too in terms of starting up a business.
It all sounds really good, but at some point you need some bigger dollars. You're going to need some money that is not going to come from friends and family, that you're not necessarily going to be able to walk into the bank and get, because the reality is there's very little equity on the table at that point. You can go to an angel finance, you can go to a VC, you can go to a mix. Maybe just describe that process and I guess maybe some of the experiences of going through that.
So as you mentioned, the bank is very difficult. I mean, the banks, as we know with the problems they've been having, they're not going to lend money to a single startup who's just been starting. So basically, you have to go private. So you have to go, as we said, with your family or with local government, and afterwards you're going to have to go to some more sophisticated investors. So an angel investor, an angel is a term in the startup community for companies who are just starting off and need this swing, need this bridge to keep going and keep the machine going. So for us, we were really looking as having a mentor and a business partner, and more than also the money. The money is good, of course, but you really want to have someone who can help you, teach you the ropes, and who's been there and who ultimately who's been through the whole process, so that you can have someone to whom you can ask your questions.
Hisham Ratnani from Modasuite.com, our guest on today's Entrepreneur. After the news, we're going to talk about online shopping, which is what Modasuite does right now, and address some of those security issues and how you've overcome that, Hisham, and also how to market yourself online in a very cluttered marketplace. It's coming up to 7:30 right now.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:33, welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. Dan Delmar, along with Fuller Landau's Mike Newton. He's in for Josh Miller, who's doing business in Hong Kong. And our guest this evening, Hisham Ratnani from Modasuite.com. And Hisham, you're an online retailer. We'll get to the security factor in a second. But first, we're talking about how you started up. The company only started just under 2 years ago. And some advice that you would have for entrepreneurs who are, especially young ones, who are just sort of starting new businesses. And we address the financing. But people who want to give you financing need more than just sort of solid numbers, right? They need people around you who also have confidence in you. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, for sure, when you start off, the real difficulty is to find people around you who understand your day-to-day and to understand the questions you might have and the challenges that you constantly face as an entrepreneur. So we found a number of advisors close to us. So as a part of the program in the Canadian Youth Business Foundation, we also had to have advisors and mentors. We also, one of our very first angel has been a very key person for us in terms of providing advice, and he's also from the web community. So that's also something a bit more unique, where you don't find that everywhere in Montreal. We're not in Silicon Valley where you have hundreds of web entrepreneurs everywhere. So finding the right people around you and knowing that people are there to help you is really key, and it's ultimately having a sounding board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the biggest mistakes that most budding entrepreneurs will do is the fact that they think they can do it all and that they don't necessarily need to ask for help or support. The role of the board members, and whether that's a formal board as people know it or a very informal board, which is sitting around the table with somebody to bounce some ideas off, the idea is really to try and look and see, where am I going to make mistakes? Where are my options? Give me some input. It's basically poke holes in my story. I'm going to give you, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to accomplish. Now your job, Mr. Board Member, is to say to me, how am I going to get there? Nuh-uh, that's not going to work. Where's the money going to come from? What happens if your sales are delayed by 6 weeks, 2 weeks? What happens if your product doesn't come in on time? What happens? And I think that's really that devil's advocate role that you're looking for from a lot of board members. And it doesn't have to be anybody more than somebody that has some experience. I mean, obviously, the closer they can get to the business you're in, the better, but nobody needs to do it alone.
Absolutely. Now, the board of directors for sure will challenge you, will criticize you in a constructive manner. And so as entrepreneurs, you always have to be very, very open to this criticism. Now, ultimately, the most important thing I think is with all your mentors, advisors, and board members is to always be aligned on the ultimate goal or what you always want to achieve together. So you know that all this constructive criticism is positive. So it's really good to take that.
I think part of when you're going to market to look for an angel or to look for a venture capital, a VC, is to find somebody who's going to bring, as Dan said, something more to the table than just money. I mean, obviously, a few years ago, money was a little more readily accessible. Today, some people have to be a little more accepting in who they get. But the reality is, you want somebody that's going to work with you and is not just worried about making sure he gets a return on investment, because ultimately, you want to be able to build your business on a long-term basis.
What were some of those early wake-up calls that you may have gotten from your board members, your advisors, that things you wouldn't have thought of heading into this new venture?
So the key thing is, I think there's a number of items, of course, but with our board of directors, we have a number of key performance indicators, or KPIs that we track on a weekly basis, and we report on them, and we get challenged on them, and we build our business upon them. So basically, they're able to pinpoint. So the great thing about having board members, and especially people who have invested in your company, is they're like consultants, but they pay you. So what's interesting about this is that they come in and they have, of course, funded the company, but they also provide a lot of advice, and they want to take this to the next level with you. So they're able to pinpoint and say, I think this might be wrong because I've seen this and that in other companies, in other industries, or in other situations in general. And I think from my experience, this could be better. So it's really, it's been great for us to having this sounding board with us.
I think the one thing you want to remember, though, Hisham, is obviously the product that you've put out there, the sale that you've made into what you're doing still goes a long way. I mean, you make it sound like these guys are coming to you. You're really going to them. I mean, you still have to sell them. By the time they've come to you, they've done their homework more so probably than you have. And you don't want to come across as unprofessional. You want to make sure that the money that they're putting in ultimately ends up not only going back to them, but with a return and with your credibility and your reputation intact.
Absolutely. Now, the process to actually get external financing is a long one, is a hardest one. So you always have to keep knocking at the door and then look at all the possibilities. And it is a long process. We haven't gone to this into detail, but it takes months and months to actually court someone and get an offer. And then they're going to dig and make sure this is actually something unique. And there's a key market opportunity because these venture capitalists or these angel investors, they also want a return, and they also have their own board of directors. They have their own people to whom they can report to.
And speaking of sort of insecurity starting out, why don't we get into the business itself, because there is some doubt about the process of online shopping. It's getting better, right? But there's still some paranoia that perhaps buying online isn't as safe, nowhere near as safe as buying something in person. How have you addressed the concerns of consumers who want to feel safe giving you credit card information online?
For sure, there is a concern, but statistically, I think you have more chances of getting mugged in the parking lot than actually getting fraud with your credit card online. Now, if you think about it, when you go to the...
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. Dan Delmar, along with Mike Newton from Fuller Landau, and Mike is filling in for Josh this week, who's in Hong Kong. Our guest this evening, Hisham Ratnani from Modasuite.com, and we also bring in Steph Darwish to the conversation. Stephanie is in marketing at Fuller Landau. And Stephanie, maybe you can start by telling us a bit about your background and a bit how you not only help businesses increase their presence, their marketing presence online, but how you did that for Fuller Landau, the company you work for.
Oh, okay, Dan. My degree's in journalism from Concordia, but I never worked in journalism. I actually went into communications as my first job at McGill University, and then from there got hired by an IT company as their marketing director. And I think it was there that I really learned the value of online marketing. I mean, I learned a lot at McGill for sure, but it was working at an IT company that was so heavily focused online that really sharpened my skills, and hopefully I'm helping Fuller Landau now.
Well, I think one of the things that we were certainly looking for was to think outside the box when it came to marketing. I mean, the last thing I wanted was another accountant to do marketing for an accounting firm. So when I saw Stephanie's CV and she did come recommended by somebody who worked at Fuller, that she had the journalism degree, that she was in the IT sector, that she had been in a professional environment like McGill, I was like, wow, we're pretty much hitting all of those major areas, because what we wanted to really do was ramp up our online presence. So we sat, and I think it took Stephanie a little while to take stock of the professional environment, because it's certainly not the same as working in an IT or working at the university. And one of the things she's done is really tried to build our online presence. And as we were talking about before, the use of Google AdWords is something that we've kind of jumped into over the last few months, and maybe Stephanie can give us a little bit of an idea of how that works and the process. And I think she may have 1 or 2 or 10 top 10 Google AdWords tips to throw at us at some point too.
I love top 10 lists. I don't know if I'll get through all 10.
Thank you, David Letterman.
Basically, I mean, we do Google AdWords for Fuller Landau, but I think when I'm talking about these tips, I'm talking them more from like a perspective of Hisham's. But across all industries, I would say that the first thing you do is to spend the time doing your research on the AdWords, and Google provides an array of tools actually to do that. So basically, don't throw yourself in and just list 100 words that you think relate to it. Take the time to find out one keyword that relates to one thing you're trying to sell, and then you can use things like the keyword tool or the traffic estimator, and that really helps narrow down who's looking for those words, how much those words cost, what your average cost will be per day even, and how many clicks even you'll get per day. So I like working with a smaller list as opposed to a bigger list. For
example, when you were looking at putting Fuller Landau's into Google AdWords, what were some of the keywords other than obviously the name that you were looking at trying to sort through?
The first thing I did for Fuller Landau, and we're still building ours, is I looked at chartered accountant. And I have to do them in French and English, so it's totally 2 different processes. It's not a direct translation by any means. So first thing I did was I said, who are we looking for? So I kind of wrote a little, you could say 1 paragraph bio on the ideal customer, a small to medium-sized business in Montreal or the Quebec area looking for general accountancy work. So I didn't specify right now into tax or HR or whatever, all the other things we do. And from there, I put it into the keyword tool, got maybe 10,000 words, but we're not going to use 10,000 words. And then from there, I saw who's searching what in Montreal. And that's one of the other things, is that it's really important to target, because you're asking people to find you, but you don't want everybody to find you. You only want people who want you to find you. So for us especially, it's geographic based. So I limited it to Quebec, who's finding in Quebec, who's finding it in English, who's finding the words in French, and what our budget was. That was another big key.
So I'm going to dumb it down for us. Basically, it's a filter.
Exactly, Mike.
And so once you have all these keywords, what do you do with them? Do you incorporate them into text on your website, or do you just throw them up randomly? How do those...
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Remaining moments on today's Entrepreneur. Let's get quickly to Stephanie Darwish's parting thoughts on online marketing. Stephanie does marketing for Fuller Landau. And Stephanie, a couple more suggestions about how businesses can increase their presence online?
Sure. Keeping with AdWords, let's say. I think one of the other most important things for AdWords is to split test your ads. So for one ad group, so for chartered accountants, for that keyword chartered accountants, I have 2 ads running. And once a month or so, I compare the results of each one. And if someone wins, they get to stay alive. And if someone does not win, I scrap them and I write a different one. So I'm always trying to beat myself, I guess you can say. It's a game.
One more quick piece of advice. We have about 15, 20 seconds.
I would say also another quick AdWords tip is to always bid on your company name, because it doesn't hurt to, someone types in Fuller Landau, we have our AdWord, then we have our Google Places page, and then we also have our actual website. So there's 3 places to click as opposed to finding one and they might click on the wrong name.
Mm-hmm. Now you see why I didn't hire an accountant to fall into the marketing side.
Stephanie Darwish, thanks so much. Now, Hisham Ratnani from Modasuite.com. In our remaining few seconds, what advice would you give to today's entrepreneur?
Well, I mean, when I was, I remember once someone told me, I was doing dishes and someone said, life's too short to do dishes, just buy a dishwasher. Well, you know, life's too short to not do what you love. So to all the aspiring entrepreneurs who actually want to do something and take it upon themselves to change the world, would just go ahead and do it.
Hisham, thanks so much.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And Mike Newton, thank you very much. Josh Miller is back next week, Monday night at 7 p.m. It's been been fun.
Dan, it's always a pleasure to, even though I only do it once or twice a year, it's a lot of fun, and I'd like to thank you for having me on.
Thanks for coming. And you can reach Fuller Landau during business hours at 514-875-2865 or visit www.flmontreal.com. Have a good night.